Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second: surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? When Nikita Khrushchev has told his people, he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better read than dead, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools. And our honored dead, who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis, didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay. There is a point beyond which they must not advance. Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. He said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of men on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Logbook Podcast. I am Kim, and joining me tonight is Mr. Paul Guns.
How you doing, Kim?
Good. Tired, working. Yesterday, we actually did our first small fundraiser for Veterans for Child Rescues. We raised quite a bit of money. It's our first go around. We got to hear from a lot of people. We were actually on Crystal Beach, and Crystal Beach was packed with conservatives for miles. And it was very fun, very refreshing, really great to hear. I wish we actually had brought our video camera, because we would have done some interviews there. But the amount of people that are just ticked over human trafficking, it's outrageous. And it's from people that I would say normal would not think. Vietnamese community was heavily in support in child trafficking. They had a lot to say. Even Mexicans were angry about it. They want something done. It was amazing, and a lot of these guys were oil field workers. And it was really good to have them hear their opinions. And of course, you had your drunk conservatives that always wanted to share their opinions.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And we're very passionate about that, because then it was like, oh, you want to talk about that? Here's a beer every single time. And I was like, dude, if I sat there and had a conversation with everybody, by the time I went to the next 10, I would be completely, face flat. It's like, because there are people like handing out shots and everything. Just because you talked about the thing about human trafficking. But other than that, it was a busy week. Anything going on with you this week, Paul?
No, I My wife and I went to the Steve Miller Band last night, and then today hung out with some friends down in Galveston. That he used to be a landlord of mine. They live in Brazil now. They came to visit for a couple weeks, so spend the day with them.
How was the concert? I know you tagged me in it. It was great.
It was good actually. So Margie Taylor was there, and she had seats. So I won the tickets on AM 740.
Oh, nice.
And so I saw she was going there, and she had lawn seats. So I was like, "Hey, I got 2 extra seats if you and your friend want to come and hang out with us." So got to talk to her, and it's always I want to say refreshing. It's not always refreshing the things that she talks about because they're pretty. It's a pretty tough thing, but it's pretty impressive. I learned just, the things that she's accomplishing on her own. With Congressman Luttrell and others, she's doing a lot in a shorter period of time.
It was funny. Congressman Morgan Luttrell actually had a telephone town hall this week. And he literally said on the telephone, which was hilarious, he said, I have 2 girls in my office all the time, because he was talking to 2 fellow Marines.
Mm-hmm.
And they're awesome because they're a mill-to-mill couple. So mill-to-mill for you civilians is military married to military. So it just sounds like a good thing, like a house on fire, pretty much how it is. And he said, I had 2 girls that come into my office all the time, and what they want to do is put the sea and shoot fiery arrows at. And I was like, that, I don't know. I told Morgan on the live stream, I was like, I don't know who you're talking about. But yeah, we do want accountability. And Brian, that's exactly the point. I want to see certain VA employees fired and criminally charged. And if you've been watching us and catching up with us, you can actually see, as we review the House Committee of Veteran Affairs, you can actually see the actors that are pro us versus the bad actors. And then you see the ones that are middle of the road. I will say this, that when I do see that, the middle of the road, I had a little bit of problem with that with Keith Self. And I called his office, and then the very next House committee, he changed his tone and he went more sharp. And I was very happy to see that, especially when it came to the mask mandates. He was very passionate in the defense of us. Guys, if you do have a congressman that up there that you can actually tell is saying what you want to hear, call them. They love getting that feedback. And I've actually seen them on the House Committee of Veteran Affairs show that they were very aware of my phone call. So they are. I'll tell you, your good actors right now is definitely Van Orden. Eli Crane is cool. Miss Mace just comes in with a mace. Miller Meeks, I tell you what, she acts like that doctor, but you're not gonna. She cuts through stuff with such precision. And I get what you're saying, Brian, is that we need to see accountability. And Rosendale is one of those that is like saying, hey, we had the VA Accountability Act passed under Trump, and the VA is just sitting there like, oh, we're not going to enforce it. Paul, were you there when we watched that House committee when she literally said that?
Yeah, but the VA from day one didn't like anything about Trump, because here in Houston, it took them like almost 3 months before they even got a picture of President Trump in the lobbies at the VA.
Yeah, that's kind of Brian has oh my goodness. Brian's actually been on our podcast before, and he has a story to tell about his Trump hat and dealing with conservative values. The thing is that I will say this, is that the VA budget was voted on this week in the House Committee of Veteran Affairs, and every single Democrat voted against to fund the VA. But yet they passed that stupid report through Mr. Rychalski, who works directly under the Secretary of Veteran Affairs. And it was from the budget office on how they're going to take our funds. Mr. Rychalski is the one that was 100% responsible for that fake report saying that Republican was taking our guns. If you want to see that report, message me here on Facebook, and I will sit here and I'll give you the report. Or I'll just try to remember to post that report underneath in the Facebook group so y'all can see it. Kimberly Hampton. Here's some breaking news. Hampton, Georgia. Mass shooting mental veteran kills other veterans. I have to look into that. I really do.
Was this just today?
Hey, Kimberly, yeah, can you send us more information? Was this today? Because that's going to really be used to hurt us very, very much so. You know, I'm wondering when I read something like this. She said it happened a week or so ago.
Maybe a few weeks.
Maybe a few weeks ago.
See, I'm surprised we haven't heard that, because that's something you would think the news media would have been like all over.
Kimberly Gallard here, she gets on a lot of the other podcasts, mainly Truck It. And I tell you what, she has pulled some stuff that when it comes to research, Kimberly here is a shark. That I do know. She has taught me a few things. Must be a Kim thing. Be honest with you. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and look into that because that's probably going to be used against us, especially with the H5 being heard 2 weeks ago, which is where the VA gives our medical information over to NICS to take away our guns. And the Veterans Affairs Administration flat out lied and said, we don't take your guns, but the FBI does. And they use other law enforcement agencies to do it.
And I can almost guarantee you, if a veteran went in and killed multiple people, it was because they weren't getting what they needed from the VA.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what it is none of it's the VA fault. So we had a friend of ours go mental up in Vegas, and it's someone that I served with. And what bothered me about where the VA turned around and attacked him, so when you are on your psych meds, you have a specific schedule that you are supposed to follow. Every veteran, we know that. And our problem is that we're waiting for our refills. And when you sit there and you cut those psych meds and you're waiting 2 weeks for your refills, you're going to go crazy. You're going to experience everything as once. When you're on those psych meds, you're supposed to wean into them, and then you're supposed to slowly come down. So at that point, because they're mishandling our medication, which Morgan Luttrell actually found out, is that it's not necessarily that the veterans aren't getting their medicine, is that we have bad actors working in pharmaceutical that are actually stealing veterans' medications that weren't ever supposed to work inside the VA because they have drug charges current on them or past criminal charges. Okay, here's Chad Candy. Hi, Chad. It's good to see you tonight. I looked it up. Doesn't look like he killed Betts, though, if this is the same one. So we'll look into that. Yeah, where he's getting there right now. Dakota is. So much for doing homework, Dakota. But tonight, guess what happened? Another meeting, and we're going to bring up Morgan Luttrell because we are having problems with everyone knows this, with wait times and dealing with your comp and pen appointments. Our comp and pen appointments are supposed to be carried out under Mission Act and done within 90 days. Is the VA doing that? No. They stopped doing that before PACT Act. That was becoming a very big issue. And then what compounded it, and I know this because I watched it happen because I had a VA employee work inside my house, is that they were not giving the workers here, when they go into queue to grab more cases, the upper echelons were not passing them down. And we've actually saw that in the House committee hearings. And so basically these VA employees are awarded for getting things processed. And if they can't get things processed because of the upper echelons, then they get in trouble. But if the upper echelons aren't giving them the work, they're getting in trouble for the chain of command not doing their job. And it brings us back to what Brian set up here, is there's no accountability, what's going on. So that's the ins and outs of what our House committee we're going to be talking about today is, the, I would say, the scapegoat of PACT Act causing backlogs, and what's going on and causing the next wait time scandal.
Hey, Tim, I got video of the policeman doing camping.
Okay, let's pull that video up. First, we're going to cover this, what happened in Georgia. I'm actually curious.
In fact, in a 2-day manhunt, has been shot and killed, and several officers have been injured.
Oh, wow.
Monk is dead. By utilizing collective investigative measures, we were able to track this suspect over to 138 in Mount Zion Parkway. We engaged the suspect. The suspect turned fire and hit the ground running. We gave chase. We engaged the suspect. He produced a handgun again, shots and fired. Well, gunfire was exchanged. The suspect was neutralized.
40-year-old Andre Longmore is suspected of fatally shooting 3 men and 1 woman just south of Atlanta yesterday morning. The circumstances surrounding the shooting are still unclear, and police have not identified a motive. And CNN national security analyst Juliet Kayyem joins us now. Juliet, sounds like a pretty tense encounter between the suspect who was on the run, it looks like, and these officers, as the sheriff was just saying a few moments.
Yeah, I'm see on that one, Paul, I think
We're thinking the same thing.
Kimberly, I will say on that one, I would have to look into it more, but it does not seem like it is a veteran incident related shooting. What we like to cover here is veteran or active duty, stories. Yes, there are some bad actors on veterans that are bad actors. We're not going to deny it. We've seen a few of them. But I do also know that the news will sit there and say veteran too, and then they also forget to say their discharge status as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something also that actually hurts, honorably discharged veterans in the news. Sometimes you'll sit there and have a bad actor veteran, like Kim Nora had even brought up on the show, is that the whole where illegals were being housed inside of hotels that veterans are staying at. Those were never veterans. They were just homeless people that she paid to act like they were veterans or say that they were veterans. And on top of that, she was complete stolen valor. She said she had a Purple Heart. She did not. She even gave herself a rank of a warrant officer. So there are some bad actors. So I would ask that if you do tag us in something, please make sure that it is veteran news.
But the one thing they just talked about how they were having the manhunt, so there probably was another news conference or something when it happened. So maybe it was. The first thing that came to my mind is, and I hate saying this, but if the guy was white, the news would have been a different scenario.
Oh yeah, definitely. The only thing that they have to do is, the reason he did this is because he was, a veteran. And that's what I'm annoyed with. And I can see that that's kind of newsworthy, but, I'm not necessarily worried about that. Just because we're veterans, we're normal people. We feel the same way. There's still domestic violence disputes. There's, that I think there's this, and I've got this so many times, especially speaking with so many people across Texas, is that there is this separation where people think that veterans, you're a veteran, so you're a high standards of morality. Are you kidding me? Marines will draw penises on everything. Hell, Navy just put Sky Dick up in the sky, a couple years ago? That was glorious, by the way. I love you, Navy, for that. You don't, I mean, the debauchery that goes on in uniform, you have no idea. So it's like, it's just, we're normal people. So it's not unusual to sit there and see, to me, to have veterans grow into crime. You know, it's not, especially if you look at the statistics of bad discharges. You know, the criminals will recommit. Yeah. Oh, okay. Here we go. Communist News Network is pushing the veteran status in order to show that veterans have mental issues, in order to push red flags and take our Second Amendment rights. That's absolutely true. But, you know, they'll always leave out the discharge status as well. So, but anyways, let's get back onto our show topic. We're already 20 minutes into the show. We are reviewing, again, Veterans Affairs House Committee, and we're looking at the claims and what's going on in the claims department. This is very good. We're going to hear a lot of bad news. We're going to hear a lot of bullshit. So, Dakota, please bring on the bullshit.
Committee will come to order. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you. And here we are here today to discuss VA's management of disability exam. We also have the opportunity to hear from our Office of Inspector General and Government Accountability Office about their work recommendations. The exams are crucial to ensuring the veterans receive accurate decisions on their disability claims. They are an important piece of the veterans disability claim file and a step towards ensuring that veterans can receive their earned benefits. Congress first granted the VA the authority to contract disability exams out in 1996, and the program has grown exponentially since. This freed up many of our VHA providers who were previously conducting disability exams to focus on patient care. The contractors are now responsible for roughly 90% of the disability exams veterans receive. Because of this, it is important that the VBA is conducting proper oversight of the contract medical exam program. Veterans deserve timely and high-quality decisions. From the first step of writing the contracts to issuing guidance to the contractors, to providing training, to holding the companies accountable for errors, this responsibility starts at the top. In 2018 report, GAO found that only one contractor was meeting the VA target accuracy rating. As of today, VA reported that overall quality has been trending up for the past 6 quarters, and the overall quality score is 90%. Job well done. And thank you. As a veteran, thank you. Additionally, almost all of the vendors across all 4 regions have showed sustained and improved, in some instances, quality percentages from the first to second quarter of this fiscal year. VA has made strides in the past 5 years with this program to ensure that vendors are meeting their accuracy requirements and are holding them accountable if they don't. Veteran satisfaction and vendor quality both remain satisfactory. However, the production percentages for all vendors are seemingly not meeting contractual requirements. I am interested to see how VA is going to address this issue and what steps are being taken to rectify the issue. VA has made strides to implement the recommendations from the GAO and the OIG, but there's always room for improvement, especially with programs of this magnitude. That being said, more veterans have been applying for benefits since the passage of the PACT Act. Exams, scheduling requests are up 30% so far, and of these, 39% are connected to the PACT Act itself. VA must exercise effective oversight as the number of exams rise. I am looking forward to hearing from the GAO and the OIG on their relevant work, as well as updates from VA on how they are implementing their recommendations. I want to thank everyone again for being here today, and I'm looking forward to a fruitful conversations. With that, I yield to the Ranking Member Pappas for our opening statement.
Thank you very much, Chairman Luttrell, and good morning, everyone. It's great to have you joining us for today's hearing on compensation and pension exams at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Since this subcommittee's last hearing on C&P exams, VA appears to have made some progress, but I'm concerned that there...
So I've got something I want to say.
Okay, good.
So I got out of the Army in 1997. So I've been out for quite a while. So I've had quite a few years. I've had a lot of C&P exams. And the worst ones I've ever had were by VA employees.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you go there and they don't even look at you. They pencil whip the forms, and if they're supposed to take range of movement measurements, they don't even do that. They just put down whatever they want. When you go to the civilian CMP exams, from my experience, they were very, very thorough, which is good for me because if I truly have an issue, that's going to represent my issue, not someone pencil whipping information. And I don't think, because even Morgan Luttrell and this committee, I think, is going to hint towards that we need to hold these third parties accountable. I think it all boils down to anything else that the VA has civilians do. The VA will screw it up because they don't want the civilians to look better. And I don't think it's the exam they're doing wrong. I think it's once it gets to the rater at the VA.
I've seen that. And even so, I had a friend, again, that worked in my house with the veteran for actually going through that paperwork. And what happens is the people that go through the paperwork, they are like, what is that? I've never heard of that. And then boom, they remove it.
Written statement of
because
Mr.
they don't know
Brodsky
what
will
it is. And they've even said multiple times or when he would come out, he was like multiple times, I don't understand it, because what happens is the file passes to someone else, to someone else, to someone else, to someone else. And during that time, it's like a telephone game. You get people that one who will just like sit there, gun deck it, whatever, or just sit there and, hurry up and get it done so they can get their bonuses, as we've heard with, Mr. Bump in the federal employees union. VA employees are stupid. They really are. But then you get those smart ones, and the smart ones just move on, to be honest, because they're smart. They're competent.
So the civilian raters actually work on a bonus system as well, though, because I had a friend that was a rater, and they were supposed to do so many per day. But the VA, if they got more done per day, more done per week, more done per month, they would all, the company QPC, I think, was one of them. They would
and veteran evaluation services.
They would get they would get a bonus, but that was paid out to the employees as well to incentivize them to do it as fast as they
We
can.
actually watched that with Kim Norhead. We watched a House committee where it showed the incentivizing of paying these non-VA raters to do that. And some of them, which I actually went to several of my friends' appointments because they were female and they didn't want to go alone. And I was like, okay, I'll just, be right there. And, and this guy would pretend to write things down on paper. And then he spun around in his chair and there was nothing written on the paper. And then we requested a copy of the report, which he was supposed to do. And he scrambled, and eventually, the VA fired him like that because he wasn't listening to people. He was just sitting there doing nothing and earning a paycheck. So yes, I would say the VA holding these people accountable was very effective because that bad actor was gone real quick. But, my husband has been waiting for his appointment for over 3 years and nothing. He's never seen a doctor. And then I found out that VES, Veterans Evaluation Service, the VA took them over. So now they were run by the VA. And there are less and less private evaluators now. And what bothered me about Morgan saying, well done, is quantity is not quality sometimes. We have actually interviewed a former VES employee in, where was it? It was in Austin, Texas. And she said she had the hardest time dealing with the VA because you only had 20 minutes to do an appointment. And in those 20 minutes, you would have a hard hearing veteran, especially with tinnitus. That's a big problem. You would have people that have batteries that don't have the proper batteries for their ear gear. And she would have to sit there and write things out for them so they would hear better or work on communication skills. And she was never allowed to fully effective do an evaluation. And so she stood up for the veterans, and then they fired her. And that's not something we want.
So
There should.
another thing, though, that sometimes veterans do this to themselves
Yeah.
is we don't prepare like we should.
Yeah.
And you can get the DBQs, you can read like, and I say this because this is what I was told. You don't read it so you can say, okay, well, I should get an 80%. And this is what I'm going to say. You need to look over those because the VA has tunnel vision, and maybe you truly are, say, a 50%. But if you describe it in a way that you feel that you should get the 50%, but the VA doesn't hear certain key words, that could put you down to a 30% or a 10%. So
Right.
it's kind of like Dakota right now. He's studying for school. When you go to get an exam at the VA, you should do some studying beforehand to understand what it is that they're looking for to make sure that.
My best advice for someone when you're going to the exam, you might be having a good day right then. Talk to your doctor as if it's your worst day.
Yeah.
And we all know what those worst days are. Sometimes my legs have a hard time doing what they should. I walk around with my neuropathy, and it looks like I'm drunk, and I'm not. It's just I can't get them to function properly, or I'm in so much pain. I get it. But I do want to bring up something. I was actually chewed out by someone that I 100% agree with too. My problems with the DBQs as well, that it also trains stolen valor. I need to bring this up because veterans won't necessarily do it themselves. There are bad actors, and we talked about that. And thank God Kimberly Gillard was showing us a bad actor tonight. What do you think of those that actually fake their injuries, Paul?
So I think that just like if you were to fake something with an insurance company, that should be considered fraud.
Yeah.
And I think you potentially could go to jail for that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of these third party, and the sad thing is they're veterans. There's the organizations that they'll help you get your rating increased, and you give them, it's usually 50% of what your increase is for 6 months. And because 4 or 5 years ago, I went to use one of them, and I ended up firing them, and then they said they were going to sue me, and I said, well, go ahead. Because I went to the Texas Veterans Commission for them to help me. And because all what those companies do is they write everything up, and as they're getting approved, as people are winning their cases, they're keeping those key words that are put in those statements, and then the next veteran that comes through, they're basically copy and pasting. And
absolutely. I've seen that. I will say this. There's one particular organization I cannot stand, and it is a female veteran organization where the director of that organization goes and climbs Mount Everest and then says, I'm 100% service-connected veteran. How? Normal people cannot climb Mount Everest. How? I'm sitting here looking at my legs every day with these huge damn scars going down them and in pain all the time. And how? And then on top of that, some of these, and this is what I call the bro vet crowd. I'm sitting here. Yeah, I love the ones that are sitting there, amputees, and they're just ripped to shit, and they're just proving everybody wrong. I love that. But the thing is that I've noticed in that community, because I hang around a lot of them, is that there are some that try to bro vet and say, look what I can do. I can work out. I can do this. I can do that. And I'm 100% service connected. I have to sit here and struggle with my nutrition because I have to take food with all of my medication, and it pisses me off because I'll have to eat when I'm not hungry or I'm puking everywhere for hours. That's something that I cannot stand. And I was actually at a meeting with a bunch of the freedom doctors. So, Dr. Stella, Dr. Nanda, Dr. Mary, they all signed and pushed our military and healthcare freedom bills. But they were they started chewing me out because they said, listen, we've been dealing with the government. We've seen a lot of veterans, but there's a lot of veterans out there that are obviously faking their injuries. And I think also if we go out to privatization, I think that's going to help stop that. Because a doctor will just sit there and say, no, no, no. But then on top of that, you have with the VA doctors, they won't properly check range either. You know, my shoulder doesn't go all, my right shoulder does not go all the way back like this one can. It can't, I just can't do it.
But it still boils down to if a civilian doctor doesn't do the right thing, they get fired. They lose that. Where if that VA doctor pencil whips the stuff, nothing gets done.
Yeah, and if a freaking if a private care doctor helps someone illegally obtain funds from the government, I think that they can get in trouble for that. That's what OIG is for, and OIG's caught them doing it. So I think there's accountability set in place for that.
Mm-hmm.
But with the VA employee doctor, there is no accountability, as Brian has shown us. So that's. There's the thing is, it's just people are people, and there's fraudulent on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I know I just covered a topic that veterans will not talk about. Have you ever, Paul? Have you ever heard a VA podcast or seen a VA or a veteran page ever talk about fake veterans?
Oh yeah,
or malingerers?
Yeah, there's a couple pictures of veterans that wearing with a bunch of ribbons and stuff that come to mind real quick. I don't know their names, but I just remember seeing them.
Oh yeah, I've seen those, but it's really not called out very too much in our community, and I think we should do that. We should kind of police our own by the saying, not act like we're so perfect as veterans too. All right, Dakota, did you get that?
I'm sure the same thing's happening in the Social Security. People that are on Social Security disability, I'm sure they're not all deserving of what they get.
All right. Yes, absolutely. I saw that in college. I had this one girl park in a handicap spot. I'm in a wheelchair, okay? And I was just like, hey, so you kind of have, I was like, so I'm in a wheelchair today. I was like, I remember asking her, is there anything physically wrong with you? And she said, no, I have PTSD. And I was like, okay, so can I take that handicap spot from you and you park a little bit further? I was like, I got kind of 2 busted legs and a busted arm. And she was like, nope. And I had to go there was no parking anywhere. And I don't understand why PTSD needs a handicap plaque. I just still don't understand that. But I had to go a mile away. And the only parking spot I could find was the reserve station. And then they saw my DV plate. And then they saw me pull out a wheelchair. And the guys came up and they're like, hey, sailor. I was like, I couldn't find a parking spot at school. Can you help me to class? And they're like, sure. And then they pulled up the Humvee and then they dropped me off to class. And I got a phone number. And a whole semester, I got a ride up to school, which was really cool, from the Army Reserve. But that's what there's definitely some bad actors in the Social Security Administration.
So now you're not supposed to park in the handicap with just disabled veteran plates. You're supposed to have the placard.
Yeah.
But before, you didn't have to have the placard. But before also, anytime, because again, I've been doing this for quite some time now. As long as you had a rating, when you went to do your license plates, as soon as they saw DV, you didn't have to have a letter. They would just ask if you wanted the placard. Yeah. So you could have a 10% because you had an ingrown fingernail. And the fact that, and I get it, they were doing it because they were trying to do something nice for veterans.
Yeah.
Texas has a shitload of veterans and a shitload of DV plates. So businesses and stuff and truly handicapped people were starting to complain to their state representatives and stuff and said, hey, we got to do something about this. So now they have kind of cracked down on it.
Yeah, we have but I tell you what, the bitching from the entitled veteran community, and I'll say the entitled veteran, I'm like, what do you need it for? I mean, I get it. If I have good days, I'm not going to use that handicap spot because I freaking get to use my legs that day. If I have a bad day and with a 2-year-old, yeah, I'm going to use that DV plate because it's a big help to me, especially picking up a toddler and going with groceries. And there are times I just have to sit in my car for 10 minutes before I can even drive down the road, or I just call my husband, and just, you're driving today or come and get me. I can't do it. That happens. And that's what happens with a lot of physical injury. But when you have, like I said, 10% because your finger had an ingrown, fingernail, you don't need a handicap spot. I think we should be victors in our life and not victims. Things are there to assist us to become victorious, not to sit there and be a handout. Sure.
But still, if you can take advantage of the free easy pass, make sure you do that. At the airport, you can park for free at the airport with DV tag.
That's true. Oh, you have to drive in though and drive your vehicle out though, because you have to show that you're a veteran.
Yeah, you show them your ID and you sign a piece of paper. But I mean, I go to the airport every week and I go and I don't park in the handicap spot because they will tow you if you don't have the placard.
And then on top of that, Montgomery County, no matter what your disability is, Montgomery County is so pro-veteran, you don't pay taxes on your house, period.
Yeah, I'm in Harris County and I don't.
Yeah, I don't either. Then on top, so there's some good pros. Here's the thing: you don't even have to be 100% to get a discount on your taxes. But in Montgomery County, you don't have to be 100% and you don't pay taxes. So there's some great things. There's some great counties. You don't have to pay for your driver's licenses to be renewed. You don't have to pay for your tags, your registration. So there's some great benefits to say truly thank you for veterans and to lighten the load. So I'm not saying that I'm complete negative Nancy tonight. So let's get going back to this hearing because Dakota we're going to skip all the speeches. Y'all can go listen to the bullshit. Let's get to the questioning.
For 5 minutes. Mr. Bracci, how long have you been working at the Office of OIG?
Nearly 22 years.
Mr. London, how long have you been in your position?
Since December of 2021.
Have recommendations from your office, Mr. Bracci, are they similar to previous recommendations that you've offered up to the Department of Veterans Affairs? You see any consistency in the recommendations?
Yes, sir. Based on work we have done within VBA, we commonly see issues of governance, accountability, and communication.
So that seems systemic. And Mr. London, I'm curious, as a veteran myself, why this proverbial can continues to get kicked down the road. Can you give me some insight on why, if the Office of Accountability is providing this information to the VA, why this continues to happen?
Thank you very much for the question. First, let me tell you that oversight and compliance is near and dear to my heart. Most of my time with the Department of Veterans Affairs, I spent my career making sure that we were in compliance with statute, regulations, and policies and procedures. So immediately after my appointment up to this position, I made a focus of making sure that, one, we have internal processes to review any deficiencies, and we take seriously the feedback that we get from GAO, from OIG, and veterans, VSOs, and their advocates. And as a result of my leadership and my team's actions, we have improved the oversight capabilities that we have. So the systemic issues that have been identified will not continue under my leadership. You have my commitment.
So I'll take that as the next time that this panel is sitting in front of us with the OIG report will not say governance, accountability, communications, and the continuance of language. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Whoa.
Mr. London, on a staff call with the VA, the performance data of the vendors for the second quarter of the fiscal year 2023 was provided. The accuracy of veteran satisfactions of vendors seems to be above the requirements. However, the production standards do not seem to be meeting the requirements. Can you elaborate, please?
Yes, thank you for the question. I believe you're referring to quarter 2 of this fiscal year where the production rate was not meeting the standard.
It's very important to note that Q2 actually represents exactly when VA started processing PACT Act claims. So from starting January 1st, we started to receive an influx of additional exam requests, which we expected and anticipated. And we have been working through that inventory. What we have subsequently done to make sure that we are meeting the demand of our veterans, we have changed the production requirement to match the receipts that we're getting and the projections that we have for exams. So the exam vendors are completing more exams than ever. As I noted in my testimony, we have completed over 25% more than we completed last year, which was a record year. And on a weekly basis, we complete over 50,000 exams. Generally, we get about 50,000 exams requested each week. So we are keeping pace with the demand, and it's a reflection of the new standards that we have, which have started in Q3, which we'll be happy to report to you and your staff in the coming weeks.
I think one of the major concerns of this committee is the implementation of the PACT Act, and I give absolute credit to you, to the Department of Veterans Affairs. Okay, I do. You guys are working hard. However, I shouldn't say, my concern is because we're already behind the 8 ball, and the cases are going to continue to come in. Do you honestly think in the next fiscal year the VA will be able to sustain an upward momentum of completing these cases?
Thank you for the question. So our exam vendors continue to modernize their processes, to provide additional training, and to expand their network to make sure that they have the examiners available to meet the demand. And if you look at how we're performing today, on average, we complete exam requests within 30 days. And as I mentioned, we're completing over 50,000 exams each week. And so if you look at our current inventory that we have, which is roughly 285,000 pending exams, that represents the fact that we are processing these at 30 days at a time, and they're in various stages of the exam process. That can be scheduling the appointments with the veteran, actually completing appointments, or actually filling out the DBQ or going through a QA process. So I feel confident that where we are today and with our planned expansion, that we'll be able to maintain a healthy inventory and to continue to provide exams so that veterans can get access to their benefits and health care.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. My time's expired. And now,
Okay, so one, Morgan, you country as hell. Playing kick the can, that's fucking hilarious. What are your thoughts, Paul?
So I could see the VA denying a bunch of them just to get them through the process real quick, because then they go into appeals and that starts a new time.
Dakota has been waiting for his appointment for 3 years,
but
over 3 years for his veteran, for his actual appointment.
So I find that surprising, because in 3 years' time, I probably had like 4 or 5 appointments.
For 3 years, he's been waiting for his appointment. That's what I'm saying. I know that we are personally being attacked. Dakota has been in school all summer and still hasn't gotten his BAS. Mm-hmm. So he ain't getting paid for his college, and he's a full-time student. So that's 3 months now, no pay. And it's ridiculous that he doesn't have any of his school benefits.
Have you reached out to Latrell's office for that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have.
Because you would think that would be something easy they can fix.
Oh, yeah. We're going in now and follow up on this week. But I like how Morgan works here. His first line of questioning every time is how many years have we worked that? And he sets them up. And I did appreciate one thing about the character of the person from the VA asked. He sat there and was willing to fall on the sword. I will do this. I will maintain that. I loved seeing that. But the fact that he filibustered with "thank you for that question." Every time a VA employee says "thank you for that question," I know I'm going to hear a load of bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's like. Okay, here it is. Here's a big lie. But the thing is, of course, I'm going to fall on the sword because I know the House can't fire me. The firing has to come direct from the Secretary of the VA, and he knows it. That's not okay. And I hope that Morgan, because right after this is when they had the vote for the VA later on the week, because Morgan actually put out a video right when that hearing ended, how pissed he was, and then he did his town hall because he was pissed. It was great to see him pissed. I hope Morgan kind of gets a little bit more pissed on that.
And they're only talking about the PACT Act, so that's just the issues with the burn pits and stuff, correct?
Yeah, the burn pits, Agent Orange.
So even if they make that right, what about all the other ones? Because I don't think they're lumping them together. I think the PACT Act is being looked at separately from all the other claims.
PACT Act was completely poorly written, and that's what I'm having trouble with the conservative sphere. PACT Act was set up where 2/3 of the funds went to Democrat discretionary funds, so the money was never allocated. You guys can go read that, go look at PACT Act. And it was it was thrown in there last minute. And there was so many objections to it. And the thing is, PACT Act was such a bad bill, but in order to get some care and some segues for veterans with these poisonings, they had to pass this bill, and they were going to be like, okay, we're going to do it later. Because remember, when that passed, it was a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate. Okay, and as we've seen, Democrats do not vote to fund Veterans Affairs. So that's the shame of it. So I guess we'll go ahead and keep going.
And obviously, the chairman mentioned the increase in claims due to PACT Act and how VA is working to meet that moment, especially as the workload continues to escalate. And I'm just wondering if you talked a little bit, Mr. London, about the vendors, the other piece of the equation here, the VHA examiners. Can you talk about whether VHA facilities will hire additional examiners to increase staff capacity to help meet this moment and ensure that we don't fall further behind?
Thank you very much for the question. So as I mentioned in my testimony, the partnership with VHA is absolutely critical to make sure that we can complete the exam for our veterans. We meet with VHA on a weekly basis to discuss the state of the workload, and we are working, as stated in the testimony, to actually have a formal work allocation plan so that we have not only the confidence, but we have a common understanding of what the workload distribution is going to be. I'm going to defer to my colleague, Dr. Bridges, to talk specifically about what VHA is doing.
Okay, and while you answer that, if you could get to the point that I believe Ms. Curta made earlier, which was just about a lack of clarity within VA about what direction we're going in and whether or not we do want to fill positions and make sure VA is beefing up its staff of examiners.
Thank you for the question, Congressman. VHA is continuing work associated with communications from the GAO needed to complete the recommendation.
GAO's Government Accountability Office, guys.
2023. As Mr. London just stated, we are also working on a work allocation MOU, and we anticipate that to be completed by September 2023 and to be implemented by fiscal year 24. The decision for increasing capacity of VHA providers is left up to the local facilities and the business to make that decision based upon their the workload for treatment as well as for CMP examiners. Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of seeing that formal workload plan, so we're all clear on where we're going, when do we expect to see that? I don't know, Mr. London, maybe if you want to take it.
Sure, I can take that. Thank you for the question. So as Dr. Bridges mentioned, we are actually working on the plan as we speak, and we plan to have it drafted by the end of the fiscal year. It will then go through VBA and VHA leadership concurrence, and obviously there will be a discussion there, and we plan to implement that in fiscal year 24. So I do not have a definitive timeline for the exact date that we will implement, but we will certainly have a draft ready for leadership by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. So can you comment on what's happening in the interim? to address this issue of lack of clarity
Did he just
and, how VA
repeat
is
himself?
responding to this increase that we're seeing in folks that need these exams.
Thank you for the question. And first, let me explain that every exam that is requested, we first look to see if that local VHA facility closest to the veteran's home actually has the capacity to complete that examination. Every examination request goes through that process. So if the capacity is not at that local facility, that is when the exam request is then forwarded to one of the exam vendors. So as Dr. Bridges said, the first primary focus is to make sure that at the local level, they're providing the healthcare and treatment that our veterans have earned and that they deserve. And so if the capacity is not there, it then goes. So today, there are CMP examinations being completed by VHA. And as the chairman mentioned, the VHA is completing about 10% of all exam requests.
Can I ask you just about maybe a philosophical question about timeliness and about quality, whether those things are in conflict and you need to work to balance them, or whether veterans can expect to see both through this process?
My view, thank you for the question. My view is that they are equally as important. We expect to complete exams as quickly as we can with the highest quality possible. That is why we set a target of 96% for all quality, and we will incentivize the vendors if they exceed that amount, and equally, if they go below 92%, we will actually charge a negative incentive to ensure that we are not only meeting the timeliness, but the quality that our veterans deserve.
Well, since such a growing share of this work is being contracted out, I think the accountability for the vendors is such an important piece of this. So measuring that progress is important. But even if you hit a score of 90, 95% in terms of timeliness or satisfaction, you're still talking about thousands of veterans that might not have a satisfactory experience. And these are people that are owed nothing but the best. So perfection is critically important in both of those areas. So I thank you for your work, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Mr. Siscotti, you're recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Oh, Siscotti.
Thank
like
you
him.
for the time, and thank you to the witnesses also for being here today. And as the subcommittee conducts this,
Hold on, I want to bring up
this
a
hearing
point here.
over.
So they're talking about the percentage of actually hiring doctors. Well, you wouldn't have lost doctors if you didn't force the jab on people, because 70% of the Veterans Affairs Administration staff and doctors were against the vaccine. So don't take their freedoms away either, the freedoms that we fought and defended. That might have something to do with that. And I'm telling you what, the fact that a conservative congressman didn't see that, you're full of shit, dude.
So I looked up Dr. Henry Bridges.
Yeah.
If it's the same Henry Bridges, but it looks like it is, he's got like a 1.5 star rating in health grades.
Well, most of them do, actually. It's that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, especially the military sexual trauma coordinator. Oh my gosh. That rating is in the dirt. It seems like her position is only because she wants to virtue signal. Let's get back into it.
Side over the medical exam process for disability claims. I'm proud to represent over 70,000 veterans in my district in southeastern Arizona. It's CD6 in the southeastern corner of the state. And we have a substantial veteran population, and it's one, my community specifically in Sierra Vista, which is in Cochise County, has that substantial veteran population. And it's also right on the U.S.-Mexico border. But Cochise County also borders the state of New Mexico to the east, with the nearest VA facility in Tucson, which is an hour and a half away or so from the Sierra Vista area. So veterans in Sierra Vista face limited options. They can't schedule a medical exam. Additionally, most of the surrounding areas are rural communities with limited providers. In the Isaacson Road Healthcare and Benefits Act of 2020, it granted temporary license portability, VA, contracted nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and other healthcare providers that conduct disability exams to provide exams across state lines. This is crucial for communities like mine in Sierra Vista, with New Mexico being so close, as I mentioned. So, Mr. London, question for you. How have the flexibilities provided by licensed portability and telehealth exams helped the increased demand for disability exams?
Thank you for the question. Uh, Without that flexibility, I believe that we would not be able to keep pace and to report the numbers that I stated earlier about the increased production and how I feel confident that we're managing the exam request appropriately. The vendors have utilized that authority to actually have traveling providers to go to places like your state to ensure that veterans can get the exams that they need. We also have a fleet, the vendors do have a fleet of mobile exam units. There are approximately 28, and as we speak, they're adding more to the fleet, where we're actually not only sending traveling providers, but we're actually going into the communities where veterans are. And we've actually started doing in-person events across the country where instead of having veterans to travel, we're going to them, especially in rural communities like the one that you serve. So I feel as though that particular authority has enabled us to be able to meet that demand and meet veterans where they are.
Hey, Paul,
Well,
you've actually been
kind of
one of
answered
those.
my next question. If there's
What's
anything
that?
you want to expand on that, my
No,
follow-up
pause
was
it.
going to be,
You've actually been to one of those. Remember
What's-
at Veterans for Veterans when they sit there and they actually had the clinics right there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they were supposedly doing the valuations. Oh my gosh. Yeah, almost every veteran that went in that room, it was just a questionnaire. And then they just didn't give a shit. They were just smiling and politely. And then no one, they didn't have time for the detail because only a veteran only had 10 minutes to sit there and talk with a VA employee whatsoever. And then the VA employee takes the stand, that one of the directors gets up there. Was it Brent Kratke this time? That was
Probably.
there.
Yeah.
And he sat there. I remember I asked a question, the felons that are in the pharmacy, and he bull-faced lied about that. Bull-faced lied. It was a complete shit show. Everything was there to make them look good and still not give the proper care to veterans. So here's the thing, even if we do get the mobile clinics in there, what's the guarantee? Are they going to be focusing on the quantity or the quality? Because I am not hearing that. I'm seeing everything quantified. I'm not seeing any quality delivered here.
And the other thing too is if they're doing quantity and they're trying to just give free ratings, then that goes into the VA is going to be spending a lot more money than it needs to. And then it gives Democrats more reason to say, this is why we need to pull back money going to the VA.
Right, which they tried to do last week on their vote. I agree 100%. I mean, here's the thing is that how many of these veterans are being re-seen and re-seen and re-seen because they can't get it right? That's also a fiscally challenging to the American public, because they can't get the paperwork right.
And a lot of times they have nurse practitioners doing these exams. And sometimes, from what I've been told, is that a nurse practitioner isn't actually a qualified exam person for some specific types of illnesses that veterans face. It's a doctor with a degree in that type of field. Nurse practitioners are usually it's kind of like a jack of all tools, but a expert of none or whatever.
Yeah. Oh gosh, let's keep going.
well, as I mentioned, with quite frankly, New Mexico being almost the same distance as the closest nearest facility, the mobile facility. If you go into them, that's an example. Anything else you can think of that is making this access better and wider for the veterans there?
Yes, thank you. It's a multi-pronged approach. So first, it's the traveling providers. Also, as I mentioned in my testimony, what the vendors are doing is, especially when there are large numbers of veterans that they need to see, they're actually leasing space in that area so they can have a routine presence there. They're also going in, and as demand comes up, they're actually working with local entities to actually utilize their space to, again, make sure that we can meet the demand. And again, that authority allows us the flexibility, even if we don't have providers in a particular area, to actually take advantage of utilizing our mobile units, using that rented space or that per diem space. And we also want to make sure that we are using telehealth capabilities and also the acceptable clinical evidence so that veterans do not have to travel at all.
I'm not sure how good your glasses are, but it seems like you're reading my notes, because that was exactly my next question. And actually, that's going to go to Ms. Curta, if I can, regarding telehealth. Can you elaborate on a little bit on how the flexibilities of license portability and telehealth reportedly helped the VA to meet demand on disability exams?
Sure. I mean, I have very similar things to say as VA. And, you know, we've heard from the contractors we spoke to, and certainly veteran service organizations, as well as VA officials, are pretty much in agreement that these flexibilities have helped meet exam demand in a number of ways. They've helped provide exams in rural areas, as we discussed. In addition, they've also broadened the pool of available providers, which we heard helped increase access to specialists. For example, audiologists and psychologists. Contract vendors were also able to send in experienced examiners from out of state to provide exams rather than needing to take the time to hire and train new providers. And finally, in addition to helping provide exams for rural veterans, we also heard that telehealth helped provide safer exams during the pandemic, saved some veterans time from traveling.
Shut up. Shut up with
and
that.
used physical
It was not
spaces
safer. It was more mental
for
health
VHA and
damaging.
vendor facilities so they could complete more exams.
Thank you. I'm out of time. I just want to say that we realize that we need to clarify some technical issues here and guidelines regarding the license portability. But I also believe that many communities like mine can benefit from this. While I realize that temporary license portability is scheduled to expire here in January of 2024, I hope we can work together to ensure that veterans can continue to benefit from easier access to these exams, especially when it's so crucial to their disability claims and disability ratings as well. So thank you, and Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, sir. Mr. DeLuzio, you're recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay. You got anything to say that, Paul?
No, it's just frustrating because I know that no matter what they say, there's still going to be issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you hear people waiting 3, 4, and maybe they've already had their exam and they're waiting, they got a court date. I heard someone the other day tell me that their court date's like 4 years away. So for their appeal, I mean, it's so far, and I don't know if he was being honest about it, but
Oh no, one of Dakota's appointments was scheduled for a year ago. A year.
Now this is due to an appeal because he didn't agree on the decision.
Oh yeah, but no, the backlogs are there. Like his one of his appointments was scheduled for a year out, and even Kim Norrid is seeing months, like 7 months out. So it's not just the claims; it's doctors in general.
And the VA used to pay back pay from the time you file the claim, but now I guess that they're trying to not pay the whole amount.
Yeah.
So.
Or they put it. Usually they like do it in segments on that back pay. But here's something I saw. I know personally because I actually have to house some veterans from Lufkin, Texas. When they actually have to redo their claims or come and do the claims, they have to stay at my house because even though the Lufkin VA has a clinic up there, Houston actually sends them down here, and they have to go use the VA. And they're 2 hours away, and God knows, out in West Texas what they're going through. And here's the thing: a Republican congressman sent some mobile units down to the border. Guess where they're at? Guess where VA doctors are at right now? On the border. It's there. Senator Ted Cruz trying to stop it. They're saying it's there for police and veteran mental health. I don't give a fuck about the police on this one. I'm sorry, but that's not your benefit.
Yeah,
I would suggest.
For veterans.
I love the police. I'm not saying that. Don't get me wrong. Is that that money is our benefits, not police benefits.
Yeah.
Okay, that's unethical for you to use. Stick your hand in our fund.
Mm-hmm.
I would say this. At that point, you need to get with your police unions and yell at them for failing you.
Mhm.
Um,
I mean, if the VA wasn't behind, I think, hey, go for it. Help each other out. But the fact that the VA is screwed up, you need to use what you have for us.
If they were all as well, Paul, I would say, okay, that's fine. It's all as well. They're doing good. Yeah, let's take care of our police on that and our Border Patrol agents. But the fact that they're there for the National Guard. The National Guard does not get VA benefits. They're not supposed to until they're in their 70s. Okay, you're a weekend warrior, all right, unless you serve a certain amount of time active. But this is non-veteran, so why are they there? Obviously, the doctors are going to be seeing illegals too. Anybody in the government at this point that pushes the false narrative of COVID-19 should be fired, period. The VA using COVID-19 as an excuse and pushes one of the biggest lies to undermine the Constitution. Everyone, we know what Jefferson said. It's called the White House lawn, and it should be there. You should not be walking away from that. So I don't believe that telehealth actually benefited anybody at all. And how can you do an appointment over telehealth with ortho injuries? You have to check range. I will say that. But I will say this. My appointment, there are VA reps on bases. The ones that work on base are phenomenal. Those are amazing VA representatives, doctors that do the evaluations, because the military just won't freaking will just hang them pretty much. So when I did my evaluations upon discharge, I got really good care. And just a shout out to those amazing doctors. They were really good. Not saying I love the VA, but there are some good doctors again. So I'm not a whole against the people that work at the VA, but I have no respect for the Government Accountability Office at all on this, and they're supposed to be handling mainly financial crimes, so I don't exactly know while they're there in this hearing. So let's go with Mr. DeLuzio.
And of course, making sure our fellow veterans aren't missed when they're eligible to be receiving compensation and care in the VA. So it's critical. Mr. Bracci, I'll start with you. I want to interrogate a bit the assumptions around outsourcing and privatizing the C&P exams and make sure that those make sense. As I understand it, principally or first, the hope here, the goal is to save money without sacrificing quality and to free up VHA staff and personnel for care. Let's start with the first one. Are we saving money without sacrificing quality and outsourcing these exams?
As far as who conducts the exams, the OIG doesn't really take a position on who conducts them. We've just conducted our oversight of contract exams because that's where the bulk of the exams are done, and that's where the bulk of the money is spent. We haven't done any specific review to the topic that you're talking about.
So in other words, reviewing or comparing outcomes in VHA relative to the contractors who are doing these exams outside VHA.
Yes, sir. We have not done any reviews that focus on that aspect.
Is there anything stopping you from doing that kind of analysis in terms
of people aren't
legislative authority
complaining
or
about
otherwise?
it.
No, nothing,
So you can't do it.
nothing legislatively that's preventing us from doing it.
Then I guess I'll ask you as well, Mr. Bracchi. Does OIG have a view of whether using contract examiners has freed up VHA to use people and their time for care more effectively?
I don't think we've done the work to make that type of assessment. We've focused on MDEO's oversight of the contract exam program. That's where we get into the issues of governance, accountability, and communication.
Okay. So then I'll ask you a version of those same questions. Do you have a view of whether this has been more effective financially without sacrificing quality to have so many of the exams be done by contractors?
I do not have reviewed it because I'm not aware of any analysis that's been conducted to actually have a conclusion to answer your question. But I thank you for the question.
Does anyone on the panel have a thought about that? Okay. something we need to be
Okay.
digging in on. That's the basic assumption, I think, of why we are doing these.
That's like going out and buying an electric car because you think you're going to save money, but then you realize your electric bill is double your gas bill.
Well, I gotta say this. Silence is an answer. So hypothetically here, this got me thinking. So I know this. Us veterans, we're difficult people. We love to do one thing, and that's bitch. And if there's a problem and it's a consistent problem, you'll hear consistent bitching, especially to the OIG. The fact that OIG has the oversight to conduct an investigation shows me veterans are not complaining. Silence is an answer. You know, when everything's good in your life and you ain't bitching about it, then you're pretty much silent on that object. The fact is that OIG can't sit there and tell us the fact that there's no oversight, there's not even talks about it, yet they can still do that investigation. But the fact is there's no cause of that investigation. Shows me that yes, it works. What do you think, Paul?
No, I think you would be correct in that, but at the same time, I think anytime in business, if you're going to change a procedure, a policy, especially when it comes to something that deals with financial means, you're going to want to know what it's been costing you. And then when you add this new procedure, you want to track what it's costing you to make sure that you are saving money or not overspending money. And I can guarantee you that those C&P examiners that the VA had, I sure hope they aren't seeing patients now for care, because they couldn't do their job as a C&P examiner, let alone probably prescribe medication to help us with our issues.
Well,
there's a reason why they didn't prescribe medicine.
Yeah. I want to handle a Windows comment right here. I've been in fiduciary now going on 3 years. Fiduciary, that is the red flag law. And we know all about it. So we actually got I got Congressman Morgan Luttrell to co-sponsor HR 705, which is Veteran Second Amendment Protection Act. And also Wesley Hunt, who's right next door to his district, to co-sponsor HR 705. Wendell, the hearing for your bill that talks about your situation of the fiduciary, because again, someone in your family, even a VA employee, they can blab on you, which is complete hearsay, make some shit up, and then boom, you lose your gun rights. And then on top of that, a CPA comes in and they tell you how to spend your money. It goes beyond that. If you have a 2-year-old like mine, they try to take your children. So I completely get it. I would suggest if you can reach out to the House committee, they should have an update for you on that piece of legislation, but I'm pretty sure it possibly passed the House. So definitely call the House committee and get your freedom back, and definitely get your due process, sir, because you definitely deserve it. Also reach out to your local congressman and get them to support HR 705, the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act. So I totally get it. And God bless. Let us know what else we can do for you. Well, let's go ahead and get back to House committee here.
Why we are having contractors do these rather than folks within VHA. And Dr. Bridges, do you have a view of whether the reliance on contractors has freed up VHA staff to do more and provide more care relative to what they were doing previously?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that question that you're posing, but I can take it back to leadership.
Please do. Does anyone else have a thought on that or have any view on that at all? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Mr. Brockie, back to you. Your testimony highlighted issues with the distance veterans are being asked to travel for their exams. And you mentioned in your testimony here today, your team found on average veterans were asked to travel 93 miles more than the contract limitations, which are, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, 50 miles for non-specialists, 100 miles for specialists each way. What percent, and I think you mentioned it earlier, what percent do you estimate of all veterans are being forced to travel beyond the contractual limitations on these exams?
Yes. So at the time of our review, it was about 11% who are having to travel beyond the mileage restrictions, and that amounted to about 65,000 veterans.
And your findings were that MDEO was not exercising really any oversight of the contract examiners in terms of how far they were asking veterans to travel?
Yes, the oversight was lacking as far as that particular topic. Once, to their credit, once we came in and we did our review and we identified issues and made recommendations, they were responsive and started to take action.
And does OIG have a sense of whether we're now seeing veterans traveling within the limitations in the contracts and those geographic ranges, or we're still seeing folks have to travel too far?
We're just now getting into our follow-up process, which starts about 90 days after report publication. So we'll be tracking that as we go through that follow-up process.
Okay. Mr. London, last questions. I almost ran out of time. If a veteran has a sensitive issue like military sexual trauma where they would want to see an examiner within the VA, are they able to request and receive that type of exam?
Yes, thank you for the question. Veterans are afforded their preference of the gender of the examiner for military sexual trauma related claims.
I wasn't asking about gender. I'm asking whether they can ask for someone within the VA to do that exam who might have more specialized experience with veterans and military sexual trauma rather than a contract exam.
Thank you for the clarification. So as I mentioned earlier, every exam, regardless of exam type, we first look to see if the local VHA facility has the capacity to complete that. So as it relates to a military sexual trauma related claim, if the availability is not there and the veteran reaches out to VA, we will do everything in our power to accommodate the veteran's request.
That's a no, guys.
I'm out of time. Thank you. I yield back.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Verge, you recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now, I don't know how it works with getting exams, but on the medical side, I had to, so I see all my care, I get all my care in the community. I had to go to Austin, and the VA was even going to pay to put me in a hotel and everything while I received my care in Austin. So, but you just have to know how to do it. And I had to do it like, you have to do it like a week or so beforehand because the paperwork, and I didn't do that. So I ended up just taking care of myself when I went there. But I think there is a way that it can be done, but most people at the VA, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. So it's different. Remember, each VA hospital doesn't necessarily run the same. So I actually had it to where they would find doctors just below the mark, like 10 minutes. And then they would sit there and make you drive. But there was one hotel, they had to send me out to New Mexico to do it. And that was one of my main reasons why I moved here to Houston, is I wanted to stay with my family in Lubbock. But they were sending me almost, it was over, good grief, it was almost 6 hours there and back and a drive. And, you know, they were going to put me in a hotel where I had to share a room with another female. And if you looked at the hotel that they put you in the reviews, people had taken pictures of rats, cockroaches. It was an absolute, it was a crack hotel. And I was like, that's the most unsafe thing. And you didn't get a room by yourself. You had to share a bedroom with another veteran. And the women kept complaining because the VA just looked at veterans or veterans, is that they were even putting females with males. And then the females would get sexually assaulted. I was like, okay, I can't do that. And then if you didn't agree with it to share a room, you know, you weren't going to get paid. That was their policy up inside Amarillo VA, which the VA, I just got some intel back from a VA employee that they are doing a school drive right now. And if you bring in school supplies to benefit VA employees and their kids, that you don't have to sit there and work the phones for a week for community care. That's actually going on. So sad. And they do this all the time. Apparently, the VA, they'll do these so-called drives and everything. And then people don't answer the phones or they don't work the call centers. So anyways, I'm about to get going on the rest of this House committee. I just got to get him back to the computer because my old girl needs an orange. And I'm so sorry I wrote over your notes.
Little concerned with what we just heard right now from Mr. DeLuzio's questions, that there's no position taken on who is giving these exams and how they're doing, that there's no sort of monitoring of what's going on.
I've
In
never
the
seen
conclusion
Mr.
of the study,
McGarvey
Mr.
before,
Brockie,
have you?
that you offered to the committee, it says the OIG has found that MDEO needs to improve its quality assurance processes and better monitor its contract exam vendors to help ensure veterans receive the benefits they are entitled to through the VA's disability programs. When we talk to our vets in our districts, what do we tell them? You guys know there's a problem, and right now there's seemingly no answers on what we're going to do about it. What should we tell
Ooh,
our
I like
vets
this
on
guy.
things you guys are planning to do to make it so that they can get the benefits they have earned and they're entitled to?
Thank you for the question. May I respond?
Please.
So I would not characterize it that we are not monitoring the quality of examinations that are going to be completed under the contract. We review approximately 1,500 quality exams every single month and almost 17,000 annually. As I reported earlier, quality is currently at 97%. OIG identified that we had an opportunity to improve our communication, which we have done. So on a monthly basis, we send our quality errors to the Office of Field Operations that work with the claims processors at each regional office to ensure that any errors that we identify does not negatively impact the veterans' access to benefits. So I would characterize that we have a strong program and we have adequate oversight, and we're communicating information, and we see improvement each and every month.
And I'm glad for that. I mean, again, we want our vets to get the care they need. I think everybody on this panel wants our vets to get the care they need. We're appreciative of the work that is being done to help take care of our veterans. But obviously, we want that work to be the best. And, you know, so one of the things we're talking about 97%, we're talking about these numbers. There's still an incredible backlog. So, I mean, I understand why we're needing contractors. We want to make sure those contractors are doing a good job and addressing the backlog that exists, because, you know, right now the current number of CMP exams outstanding is 300,000. And
the backlog was not packed out. It was starting beforehand.
Still over 250,000 backlogged exams, but COVID alone doesn't explain the backlog, because prior to the pandemic, the backlog was about 160,000. So these issues have been a long-standing area of concern. So we've got to get the backlog. We want to make sure that in getting the backlog, the veterans are having quality exams done by these contractors. So you know, what can we do to help? What can Congress do to help this backlog? What resources do you need? What legislative changes do you guys recommend, if any, that we can help with?
Thank you very much for the question. I go back to one example is license portability authority. First, we're renewing that authority or making it permanent as VA requested, and also giving VA the authority to expand the types of providers that can utilize that authority. I believe that that will allow us to make extreme inroads on the already excellent progress that we're making in completing exams on average in 30 days.
I appreciate that. And so just one last question, because we're getting short on time. Would putting certain VA clinicians who are VHA employees on the VBA payroll change the VHA's hesitancy of assigning clinicians to perform the CMP exams?
Thank you for the question. I'll defer that question to my VHA colleague, Dr. Bridges.
Can you repeat the question for me?
Sure. Would putting certain VA clinicians who are VHA employees on the
that
VBA
motherfucker tune
payroll
out?
change the VHA's hesitancy of assigning clinicians to perform these CMP exams, helping with the backlog?
I don't think I have a good answer for you on that question. I will have to take that one back to leadership.
Thank you. Please do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Ooh. Guess who actually pulled a CVA report? 160,000 backlogs. Mr. McGarvey, appreciate that. Thank you for listening to Concerned Veterans for America and actually looking at their FOIAs. Well done, sir.
And he's a Democrat from Kentucky.
Wow. Spot on. That's something I'm very good to see. However, the fact that he voted against the House bill, I'm very disappointed. Two-faced son of a bitch right there. But however, I will skip praise where praise due. That was a concerned veteran report that he just read of 160,000 backlog pre-pandemic. So thank you for that honesty. And from a Democrat, wow. Can't judge a book by its cover, but that's obviously one smart cookie. Very impressed by Mr. McGarvey tonight.
So,
what do you think?
And this is just thinking about that, how all the Democrats voted no. So that makes me not a very happy veteran as well. But a lot of times, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, they write these laws that they try to get passed, but they add a lot of stuff to them. So the one thing that I think maybe we don't know is, I agree, no, they shouldn't have voted against something that's supposed to help veterans, but was there fluff in there that was something that wasn't truly helping veterans?
The only reason they voted no on the VA is because they wanted to keep the two new diversity, equity, inclusion departments, which is garbage.
Okay.
That's something that just does not need to be in the VA.
No, we're veterans. We're not black, white.
Right. We don't need to divide that. That's a no-go, which is already there. They also wanted to continue to teach CRT. I'm so sorry. If you work at the VA, you already went to college. If you want to go learn CRT, go and do that on your own. The VA, I understand it's a teaching hospital for colleges, but you get your fucking shit and your ideology out the fuck out of my veteran community, period. Okay, that just doesn't need to be there. Abortion inside the VA.
Okay.
You know, that's another thing. The LGBT garbage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they sat there and pulled down the American flag and flew only the LGBT flag for a month. Not okay, especially at veteran cemeteries. It's bullshit. The American flag unites us all, including your gay ass.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Okay, I don't care what the fuck you wear. I don't care if you show up in a dress, but you're not allowed in my women's clinic. Okay, we just earn that right to our privacy. But you know, if you feel like a woman, good on you. Don't care. But you're the way you feel is not going to dictate my rights. Okay, I have a right to privacy. I have a right to female spaces. Why do you need an OBGYN anyways? Just saying. Ridiculous. What are your thoughts? So no, that's why the Democrats voted it out.
So with those reasons, I would say, that's wrong because majority of veterans would not agree with that.
And then on top of that, the HR 705 was in there to give us due process inside of Veteran Affairs. So, however, it did pass the House budget. So I suggest everyone, you call your senators. I've already called my senators to approve the House bill for the Veterans Affairs. Also call your senators to approve the House bill on the NDAA because it also removes that garbage. We're war fighters. We should concentrate on war, not the color of our skin, and definitely not our private parts, but we should take care of our privates, especially with mental health. That's what I would say. All right, let's get back going to this. We only have a few minutes left.
5 minutes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. London, how many GAO recommendations have not been implemented across? Let's just stick with VBA.
Is that self?
Across VBA, not just my office.
I didn't hear the name.
Thank you for the question. I just wanted to clarify.
Stop saying
We'll have to
that
take that
bullshit.
back and get back to you. I don't have that number offhand.
Yeah, from the macro perspective, across VA as a whole, it's in the hundreds. That's from the macro. So, Mr. Bracci, am I getting that right?
Yes, sir.
I've heard the incentives that the providers, that the contractors have. Do you have any monetary penalties should they not meet the standards?
I know within the new contracts that were written, they have the option of providing monetary incentives and monetary disincentives in order to hold vendors accountable, but I think that question can be better answered by Mr. London and his team.
Mr. London?
Yes, thank you for the question. For each of the 5 performance elements that we have, quality, customer service, timeliness, average days that an exam request is pending, and average days to complete an exam request, all of those particular performance measures are eligible for both incentives and negative incentives.
And how often do you exercise the penalties?
Thank you.
Disincentives, as you call them.
Yes, thank you for the follow-up question. As Mr. Bracci mentioned, we just recently changed the contract to be able to specifically address quality and customer service. Before, we didn't have elements to do those. However, before, we focused on production and timeliness, and we have assessed negative incentives exceeding $26 million.
Okay, that's good to hear, because my experience, as short as it is in Congress, the administration responds primarily to money. So I want to talk about the density of your contract examiners, because as we talk about time it takes, Mr. Bracci, I think I'm back to you. The time it takes for veterans to get to an exam, do we have the density of contract examiners that we need, or is this, are they located primarily in urban areas? Talk to me about the rural areas.
Yes, sir. As far as questions of resources and process, I think Mr. London would better answer that.
Ooh, throw them under the bus,
Thank you for
OIG.
the question. So if you look at where VA facilities are located, and you look at where the contractors either have their branded locations or they have partnerships with third-party examiners, are exactly where VHA facilities are. And we also have density into some rural areas as well. As I mentioned before, we utilize the License Portability Authority to have traveling providers to go to those communities. We also have mobile units that go there. So from a density standpoint, we are located where large populations of veterans reside, and for those areas where veterans are in rural communities, we're doing everything we can to go to where they are so they do not have to travel long distances.
I know that broadband is an issue in some rural areas, including part of my district. Does the lack of broadband hinder your telemedicine attempt?
Yes,
And
that's well
thank you for the
done.
question. In some limited situations, I have heard of circumstances where the veteran either does not have the equipment or the access to broadband. As far as the equipment, the vendors do have the capability to actually send equipment to the veteran so they can participate in a telehealth exam. As far as the broadband availability, there are unfortunately situations where I know veterans do not have access to that capability.
So how often do you send equipment to them to use? That's interesting.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's at the veteran's request. I'll have to take that back to give you definitive numbers, but I do know that that capability is being used across our vendor network.
I would like to get that answer. That's very good. Okay, my time is up, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Self. To the
Okay, so veterans don't know this equipment exists because they don't tell them. A lot of it is actually sitting inside what department? I can't remember.
That's
prosthetics.
Prosthetics, or in employees' homes. The employees probably know how to ask for it and request it as veterans, so they're probably requesting it, and they all got tablets at their house for their kids.
Right. Just a quick announcement. Mr. Self is going to be hosting a Q&A up in McKinney, Texas on August 9th. So since you've seen him here on the House Committee of Veteran Affairs, please go. You can check our story. You can check our feed on Facebook, or you can just send in a message or an email at the logbook at Proton Mail. I will send you the information. August 9th, McKinney, Texas, that's his district. Come and ask your questions to Congressman Pete Self. He's waiting to hear from you, and he does like hearing from you guys. I did phone him in about, hey, I wanted a little bit more clarity when he speaks upon the House Committee of Veteran Affairs, and he has done that. So he does take, he does take some things to heart, guys. So positive and constructive criticism doesn't hurt people; it just builds people. So keep it positive, please.
How far is McKinney from here?
It's 4 hours.
And can you go to it, or is it all virtual?
Oh, you can go to it. I'll be there. So just make sure because I'm going to drive there, and then I'm driving back tonight as well because I have a event I have to put on at the 10th. Again, we are having our Family Freedom Festival on August 10th, and it's going to be in Chinatown. We're going to have some guest speakers come out. We're going to have some music, and we're going to be fundraising for Texans for Vaccine Choice that lobbies healthcare issues for veterans on the state level. We're going to do Battle to Be. We'll be fundraising for them so they can help out our fire and our police officers, and then Veterans for Child Rescue. And of course, CVA is going to be there talking about what legislative options that we can pursue with Congress. So come and join us as we have vendors, bouncy houses, lots of free goodies in Chinatown. Again, we'll keep posting the event up, and we will get back to the stream unless you have anything to add, Paul.
Just once again, the last thing that gentleman from the VA was talking about is holding these third parties accountable by taking money away from them if they're not doing the right thing. And it really upsets me that the VA can take money away from these third parties for not doing the right thing, but yet the VA wants to get rid of the Whistleblower Act and everything else to protect.
Oh yeah, they do nothing wrong
From the VA employees. I mean,
and we can see that.
Yeah.
That's why the attitude at Michael E. DeBakey and Katie VA is just so sour in multiple clinics, is because they know that they're just above everybody else and they're godlike. They're not human. They can't do anything wrong.
And
They can't.
this self guy, I mean, that's what I'd like to ask him is, I know it's important to make sure that these contractors are doing the right thing, but why aren't we asking the VA to do the same thing?
Right. It comes down to
the
accountability.
same from the VA employees.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we only got a few more minutes to go, and it's not up. There it is.
You're good? Okay. Well, I have a question. Mr. London, pre-hearing brief with the staff mentioned that the total cost for the contract programs, including exams, salaries, and reimbursement for OIT, among other things, was roughly $2.3 billion last fiscal year, but not all was used. How much was left over?
Thank you very much for the question. I do not have the direct number that's left over, so I'll be sure to come back to you because we actually have that number still available because we have not de-obligated those funds because there are still invoices that are being processed from last fiscal year.
So the remaining funds will be utilized where we sent them initially?
That's correct. And any unused funds will be de-obligated and sent back to Treasury.
Okay. Mr. Brachi,
okay.
when you finish your report, who is the first person you send that to inside the department? A name. I want a name.
There's a group within VBA who we
Nope, somebody's in charge. One person. Who is it?
Our report and recommendations go directly to the Undersecretary for Benefits. It goes.
Oh no, it froze.
What's completed?
Undersecretary of VA
Who does that go to
Benefits.
directly?
Our recommendations are directed to whoever is most directly responsible for implementing them. So in the case of our most recent report, it was the Secretary of the VA, McDonough.
Was Mr. McDonough?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ms.
Oh.
Bowden, how are you today?
Good, thank you.
I just wanted you on the record so everybody knew that you were here.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. I want to thank you all for appearing today to discuss this important issue. Disability exams are an important part of our disability claims process and ensuring veterans receive their earned benefits.
Closing remarks. Y'all can go watch that yourself. I'm not going to sit here and hold your hands on that. I want a name. I love that. I love Morgan on that. Every time he speaks up how many years you've worked here, and then I want a name. He always goes for that because I can see things working and turning. Okay, who can we blame? Who can we blame? Who can we blame? But I will say this is that Veteran Affairs employee. Gosh, I even forget his name, and his name tag was right there. He said that the funds will be returned to the Department of Treasury. Do you think that will happen? Do you think Mr. Rachowski will allow that?
Well, in the end, there might not be any funds left because there's still invoices that are outstanding. So who knows what's really going on with all those funds?
Yeah. Yeah, but I do like that he said that on record.
Yeah.
You know, he did surprise me a bit on this interview, but there was still too much filibustering for my mind on that. I think he means well. Will he be well? No, I don't. The character of him filibustering just shows me that he's just doing his job, that there's no care for veterans. And until there's accountability, we're not going to be able to see these people's character come through because lies just don't exist with the Department of Veteran Affairs.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, anyways, you got anything else to add for that?
No, I think we're good.
We're good. Well, guys, I guess we're going to go ahead and end a little bit early tonight. We want to thank you for joining us. We hope that you have a good week. We will be coming back in with the logbook redacted on Fridays. And again, we will also be reviewing on Sundays and Mondays if we have a part 2 on House Committee briefings. We are going to be talking with our congressman this week. We're going to find out more details from our congressional representative on the vote for the VA House Committee. So we will come back with you with that on Friday. Guys, thank you for joining us and spending your Sunday evenings with us. And you take care and God bless.
Take care.